There you go.
Hello, folks. Well, welcome to another edition of Lunch with the Legends, and I'm here with this gentleman here. It's been part of my wrestling. Before I started wrestling, I was doing garden work, so I've been knowing you for
30, 35, 40.
years.
Yeah.
So,
I remember you tagging along with your big brother.
yeah.
Yeah.
So for the people who are not wise what's going on, just give a little bit of history about yourself, and I can just tell me some stories that you can share without getting anybody in trouble.
Well, that was at a time when I was probably at my best, because it's right around that time when Jerry Blackwell started Southern Championship. He was the promoter and owner. We had Dick Slater, Bob Orton Jr., Tommy Rich, Wrestling 2, and I wound up in we used to do TV over at Miss Kitty's in Marietta.
Yes, sir.
What a heck of a place to have a wrestling match, huh?
Dance floor, then had the balcony wrapped around. So
Oh man,
perfect place for TV.
yeah. I had a pretty good run with against Wrestling 2. Lasted about a year back then. It was something else. Plus, I got to hang around with my childhood idol, which was Dick Slater. Yeah, I can tell you. Want to know a story that just brought to mind one? But back in Rome, Georgia, at the place called the Memorial Gym, back when we were 13, 14 years old, a guy by the name of Marty Lundy and Pee Wee Anderson. For those of you that still don't know, Marty Lundy is Arn Anderson. Yeah. And we grew up together, known each other since we were 9 years old, played football, baseball again. He went to a different school, but my grandmother lived right up the street from his grandmother, and he was raised by his grandmother. So we knew each other from an early age. But we were at the Memorial Gym one night, and this was about third or fourth time we were about 16, 17 years old, and we were working ourselves up to the point to ask somebody, how do you get in the wrestling business? So we were at the Memorial Gym one night, and Abdullah wrestled Taro Tanaka.
Oh.
You remember him?
Yes.
The big Japanese guy?
Yes.
It was awesome. And you know how Abdullah is when he gets out on the floor and he runs through the crowd, people scatter. I mean, it's really amazing to see them do it in Japan. All those kids and Japanese people just start flying, they scatter like bugs. You know what I mean?
Especially when he and Brody were
playing. Well, we were all standing there. We were standing behind ringside, standing on the floor watching the matches, and Abdullah come flying up the thing, and Pee Wee Anderson. I guess everybody knows who Pee Wee is.
He's a referee.
He's a great referee.
Great.
He was standing there, and Abdullah turned around and walked off from him, and Pee Wee spit on him. And I looked at Arn, and he looked at me, and we looked at Abdullah, and he stopped dead in his tracks and reached back and wiped it. And we turned around, and me and Marty both, we started pointing. We sold him out. We pointed at Pee Wee because he knew that the only one that could probably outrun him was him. But we were about 16, 17 years old. But he chased Pee Wee all the way out the front door, and I believe to this day that he was legitimately trying to catch Pee Wee. And I believe if he had caught him, that I believe he would have put him, that he would have broke something, his arms, legs, or something. But Pee Wee stayed gone, and that was the semi-main event. The main event was Slater and Orton against Wrestling 1 and Wrestling 2, Tim Woods.
Yes.
Pee Wee finally comes sneaking back in the door and come back in there. He had on Levi blue jeans, but he had a big wet spot right here. He had pissed all over himself. He pissed all over himself with Abdullah chasing him.
I would too. He's a beast.
Oh man, and back then he was really believable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He still moved good then.
Oh man, it was like the boogeyman for real.
Oh, I tell you, it's like when the bell rung and he hit the ring, it was totally different. He was straight out and doing the butcher. Nothing else. He was straight out doing it.
Far as from everything I've ever heard, him, Terry Gordy, and Stan Hansen are the biggest Americans to ever draw in Japan. Yeah, Bruiser Brody, Abdullah, and Terry Gordy. I'm pretty sure the Funks did good too, but I know that Gordy and Stan Hansen and Abdullah were huge in Japan. I mean, they were absolutely huge.
It's tough. Anything else? Any other stories over the years? Who trained you?
Ted Allen.
Because we
A
still
lot of people know Ted Allen. Yeah, Ted Allen trained. Well, let me continue with that. I think it was a couple of matches later on after the incident where Pee Wee pissed in his pants. We finally went back and we could just tell by the way that he walked around and had the pencil behind his ear that Ole Anderson was. We kind of figured he was the boss.
Yeah.
So we just didn't know shit from shoe polish. We just stopped him one day and said, Hey, Mr. Anderson, we wrestled in high school, pretty good, state champions. We want to be professional wrestlers. And he looked at us and went and walked off. Didn't even say a word, just kind of and walked off. And me and Marty's looking at each other like, damn, man. I said, what an asshole, man. What an amazing asshole. And so about 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, here come Ted Allen. Ted was on the card. Ted worked the opening match that night.
Probably the ring.
Yeah, or probably set the ring up too. But I didn't know Ted then until this is how I first met Ted. He worked on the card that night, but after about 30 minutes, he came walking back over to us, and he said, "Hey," said, "you the guys that approached Ole and told him you wanted to be wrestlers?" And we said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, he sent me out here to talk to you." Now I said, "Well," I said, "Yeah, that's us." I said, "But he blew us off. He looked at us like we were stupid." He said, "Well, he sent me to talk to y'all." He said, "I train guys," and that was it. It wasn't but about 3 or 4 weeks after that, we had a friend whose dad owned the furniture store in Rome on the Kingston Highway. So he bought a ring. He had a little. Yeah, he bought a ring from Ted, and he actually kept it as long as we were training. And Ted trained us. He'd come down 2 or 3 nights a week and train us in that furniture store. And till it was about we'd worked out 4 or 5 times, and Ted comes and says, "Sorry y'all, but we're gonna have to cut the training. We're gonna have to kind of take a break, suspend it a little bit." So I've just gotten offered a job working for Stu Hart up in Calgary, and me and Danny Davis is Danny Davis who was the Nightmares, yeah, and so he said, "But y'all just keep doing working on what we've been working on." Said, "I'll see." So hell, we would just go sit over at Marty's. We'd go down at his house and watch TBS on Saturday night, 6:05, 7:05, 6:05, and we'd get in the car and go over to the gym and over to the furniture store and do what we saw. Yeah, just kind of trained ourselves. By the time Ted got back, which he was gone about 2 months, he went over and we went and worked out. He took one look at us and he said, "Hell, y'all ready for a match?" And he took us. The first place we went over to Boaz, and this lady named Hazel had an old abandoned shirt factory. It used to be a shirt factory, and she owned it, and she ran wrestling shows in there. Ken Hawk, Pat Rose, me and Marty were tag partners. Our very first match, and it was against Ken Hawk and Pat Rose. Yeah, I remind Pat all the time, and Pat Rose bullied the shit out of us. Yeah, we used to our whole conversation on the way home was how bad we were going to beat the shit out of it. And the next time, the next week, because we couldn't take it no more. He was just bullying the shit out of us.
See if y'all gonna make it, right?
Yeah, a guy named Larry Cheatham. Trying to think of some more of them guys. But of course, Jimmy Powell was there. That Ken Hawk, man. I didn't know till later on that Ken Hawk used to manage the Samoans at one time.
Oh, wow. I think I saw pictures of that today.
Yeah,
early on.
Yeah, it was something, and but we wound up working over in Alabama 2 or 3, 4 weeks in a row, and then Ted called us. And one thing about Ted, he did for us when he trained us, he got us booked. He didn't just after we were done and he had our money, just see you down the road. He would actually get. We went to Knoxville and worked for Blackjack Mulligan in Knoxville, and we worked Knoxville, done TV in Knoxville, and then the next night we went to Bowling Green, Kentucky. That was right on up the road a little. Yeah, and that was back when Barry I'd never seen Barry Windham before, but I knew he had to be Blackjack's son because he looked just like him. But he weighed about 150 pounds, skinny as a rail, but hell, he was already 6'7", 6'6". But he couldn't have been no more than 16 years old. But he was absolutely good back then. And that Blackjack Mulligan back then was a scary dude, man. This guy was he was a
true tough man.
Oh man, he was huge. He was something else. But yeah, that's pretty much how. And then later on, after I'd been working for a while, a guy by the name of Ray Traylor come along.
Big boss man.
And Ted trained him a little bit. But at that time, Ole and Ted had some disagreements over money, of course.
Always.
And Ole and Ted said, "Man, will you take?" He said, "Will you get Ray booked down at? Will you get him booked on TV?" And I said, "Sure." Because at that time, Jody Hamilton ran the back and booked a lot of the guys, enhancement guys. So I said, yeah, we went in. So I took Bubba to, and he turned out to be the big boss man. So I took him over to Boaz, and he had a good match over there. So we went to got him booked to. When asked Dusty could he use him, and I said he's about 350 pounds and moves like a cat. I said he's unbelievable. He said, yeah, bring him on. Well, I asked Jody, but when he got there, he was getting ready for his match, and he was shaking like a leaf. He was shaking like a leaf, and he asked. All right, brother. Glad to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Everybody, this is.
What are you recording?
Yeah, look down to say hello right real quick.
Yeah, so tell everybody in Atlanta hello. This is lunchtime with the Rocker.
Dude, I didn't know. I'm sorry.
No, we're good.
It's okay.
I was just coming to say goodbye to everybody. So bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
That's what you get for ruining our program.
I was talking about
Boaz.
Big Bubba. So I told Jody, and I said, Jody, you got to book this guy. He's a freaking nature. And he said, okay, bring him on. So I took him down there. He gets his stuff on. He had some gear that was, that ain't no telling who. I mean, they wasn't new. It was. He couldn't find anything to fit him.
Borrows.
Yeah, and so we get down there, and Dusty comes by and takes a look at him, and he sees him. So he puts him with Tully. You remember when Tully did the slingshot suplex? He'd bounce you off the top rope and then
smooth move.
Yeah, he'd bounce you off the top and then go and then just in wall in one motion throw you back for the suplex. Well, believe it or not, he put him with Tully, and he gave him that slingshot suplex, and it was perfect. And he was sitting right there by me in the locker room. Dusty comes back and he says, young man, next Saturday, I want you to pack a suitcase, put you some changes of clothes, get you 4 or 5 sport coats. I want you to get you a hat, a mafia hat, a real businessman, mafia guy looking hat. He said a pair of sunglasses, and he said when you come to TV next Saturday, be prepared to go on a trip. And didn't tell him he was putting him with Jim Cornette or nothing, but he said they were over there talking about it. They decided not to show that match of him and Tully. They loved him so much that they scrubbed it. Yeah, and he came back the next Saturday and went on TV as Jim Cornette's bodyguard, Big Bubba, and the rest is history. He left. I went by and picked him up, and I was working probably 4 or 5 nights a week, so. Back then we had 2 crews. They'd have a crew go up north, and then another crew, the B group, would work around Charlotte or work around the Carolinas and so. But Bubba was working the main event back then. Ricky and Robert and Dennis and Bobby were hotter than fish grease.
So
man.
From 1 week to a jobber to being a superstar, a bodyguard for
and legit, and really literally never lost a match on TV because they scrapped that match and didn't show it because they didn't want him to see him getting beat.
Exactly. They used what they had
and
in one building.
What was funny is Tully was in the lock back in the dressing room trying to pick him up and say, man, I don't think I can do it. And he, Tully was an asshole. Yeah. And he was telling, man, if you screw this up. Like he didn't have enough pressure. Yeah. If you knew Ray, he was real quiet. Yeah. Didn't hardly say anything. You couldn't hardly get him to talk unless, you've been down, you know, you get down the road 100 miles, he finally start talking, you know, but he was just, you know, kept his mouth closed. But I told him, I said, man, if you screw this up, make me look bad, said it's gonna be bad. It's gonna be bad for you. You'll never work here. And just letting him have it. And I said, damn, man.
From here.
Yeah, I said, damn, Tully. I said, if he screws up, it won't be his fault. And he picked him up a couple of times in the dressing room, and Bubba went right up with him and turned and Bubba, and he set him down. And he looked like, damn, what, you know. He thought I couldn't. Yeah, but he was still unsure, you know, because you know what nerves will do to you on TV. So
especially first out.
Yeah, but it was absolutely great. It was. I was glad to see, and when he came back, he went and got an apartment over there. There was a place, I can't remember the name of it now, where all the boys lived, and Dick Murdoch, Pez Watley, we lived right beside me. But Bubba got him one, I stayed. He let me stay in his apartment with him, and didn't charge me no rent or nothing. Man, he was so grateful. But he had a hell of a career.
Well,
yeah.
Appreciate you taking time to do this stuff.
Sure, man.
Where can the folks see you on a regular basis?
Primetime Wrestling in Rome, Georgia is gaining traction around the South. It's getting to be one of the better wrestling promotions in Georgia. I mean, it's really second to none. If you come to Primetime Wrestling, you're going to find out that you're going to see some quality matches. I mean,
and actually, that's where
for sure.
it should be taped after the show. So,
yeah.
I want to thank you, sir, for
you're welcome,
you've
Terry.
done over the years.
You're welcome, Terry.
So,
hey, I hope we give another 30 together.
Oh, yeah. So, as Pooch and Pop like to say,
Yeah.
peace, love, see ya.